She married a cold CEO at 46 and discovered the crime he hid at 46. Elena had built a life of quiet, predictable contentment. After a messy divorce in her late 30s, she'd pretty much given up on the whole idea of grand romance. Instead, she poured everything into her job as a research librarian, finding comfort in history and forgotten stories. Her world was small, safe, and entirely her own. She was convinced the chapter on passion was closed for good. But then, Julian Croft walked into a university fundraiser, and Elena's quiet little world went up in flames. He was everything the men in her past weren't. Devastatingly handsome, with a quiet power that was both scary and magnetic. He was the CEO of Croft Industries, a tech giant about to change the world with a new battery technology called Helios. Their romance was a complete whirlwind, launching Elena into a life she'd only ever read about in books. There were private jets, sudden trips to Paris, and dinners where the wine cost more than her rent. Julian was reserved, his feelings locked behind a wall of cool control, but Elena just saw it as depth. She thought he was a genius burdened by his own brilliance, a titan who just needed a calm harbor. And she, at 46, decided she would be that harbor. For the first time in years, she felt seen, chosen, and incredibly alive. So when he proposed after just 6 months with a diamond that looked like it held an entire galaxy, she said yes without a second thought. She knew she was marrying a cold CEO, but she was sure her warmth could melt the ice. She moved into his massive, minimalist mansion, a house that was all clean lines and empty spaces, thinking she'd finally found her second chance. But that beautiful world of sterile luxury was an elaborate lie. And in the dead of night, she would stumble upon the crime he'd hidden, forcing her to investigate the powerful, dangerous man she now slept beside. The first few months of their marriage were a strange contrast. In public, Julian was a perfect husband. He'd rest his hand on the small of her back, a light but possessive touch, as he guided her through crowds of investors and fawning journalists. He'd introduce her as his brilliant wife, his anchor, and flash a smile that never quite made it to his cold, gray eyes. At these events, Elena felt like another one of his prized possessions, a perfect object in his collection of success. She played her part, wearing the designer gowns he picked out, perfecting her laugh, and keeping her conversation light. She told herself this is just what happiness looks like when you're this rich and powerful. But the second the heavy oak door of their mansion closed, the performance was over. Julian would vanish into his own world, leaving a silence between them that was as vast and empty as the white-walled rooms he loved. He'd lock himself in his home office for hours, a sleek fortress she was forbidden from entering. If she tried to bridge the gap, bringing him coffee or asking about his day, he'd grunt a one-word answer, his eyes glued to one of the 6 screens showing stock market data. His affection was rationed out in tiny, calculated doses that always kept her wanting more. The passion they'd had was gone, replaced by a polite, chilling distance. Elena tried to make excuses for him. He was under a lot of pressure. The global launch of the Helios battery, a product that was supposed to revolutionize energy storage, was just months away. It was his life's work. She told herself that once the launch was over, he would finally relax. The man she fell in love with, the one who chased her with such fierce intensity, would come back. So she kept busy. She managed the staff, organized charity events, and tried to bring some warmth into their cold, architectural house. She bought vibrant paintings that were politely moved to a guest wing and plush rugs that were replaced overnight with the original stark gray ones. Every single attempt she made to personalize her home was gently, but firmly erased. She wasn't his partner. She was a guest in her own home, just another decoration in the life of Julian Croft. A deep, creeping loneliness started to set in. The mansion, with its floor-to-ceiling windows, felt more like a glass cage than a home. Her old friends, intimidated by her new life, started calling less. When they did, she found she had nothing to say. How could she complain about the suffocating silence when she was living in unimaginable luxury? How could she explain that she felt married to a ghost who just happened to share her bed? The first real crack in the facade appeared at a dinner party for Croft Industries board members. Elena was seated next to a chatty older board member named Mr. Pierce. After his third scotch, he got a little sentimental. "Julian is a genius," he slurred, pointing his glass toward Julian at the head of the table. "So driven, but he wasn't always this. Hard. That whole business with Marcus Thornton changed him." Elena's ears perked up. "Marcus Thornton?" she asked. Try to sound casual. Pierce's eyes widened a bit, like he'd said too much. "Oh, brilliant kid. An engineer. He was head of the Helios project for a while. A real visionary. But he and Julian had a falling out. Creative differences. Marcus left the company about a year ago. Shame, really." He took a long gulp of his drink. He was a firebrand, that one, obsessed with safety protocols. Triple checking, quadruple checking everything. It drove Julian nuts. Julian wants to change the world tomorrow. Marcus wanted to make sure the world would still be here the day after. Later that night, lying next to Julian's sleeping form, that name echoed in her head. Marcus Thornton. The way Mr. Pierce's voice dropped, the sudden caution in his eyes, it planted a seed of doubt. The next day, letting her librarian instincts take over, she typed his name into a search engine. The results were thin. A few mentions in old tech articles praising his work. A LinkedIn profile that hadn't been touched in a year. And then a small article from a local Colorado newspaper. Hiker found dead after accidental fall. The date was 11 months ago, just 2 weeks after Pierce said he had left the company. The man in the picture was young, with bright, intense eyes. His name was Marcus Thornton. A cold dread washed over her. An accident. It had to be a tragic coincidence. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she just pulled on a loose thread, and she was terrified of what was about to unravel. The man sleeping next to her was a total stranger. She had married a name and a fortune. Now, for the first time, she desperately needed to know who Julian Croft really was. Finding out what happened to Marcus Thornton became her secret obsession, a quiet rebellion against the sterile emptiness of her life. Elena started her investigation, the only way she knew how, research. During the long days when Julian was gone, she stopped being the CEO's wife and became the librarian she used to be. She started with Julian's study. It was his inner sanctum, the one place she was absolutely not allowed. The biometric lock on the door was a constant reminder of his secrets. For weeks, she just watched him. She noticed he only locked it when he left for the day, and he always used his right thumb. Her chance came on a Wednesday. Julian had an early flight to Tokyo. He was distracted all morning, his mind already halfway across the world. As he gave her a quick goodbye kiss, she saw it, the faint, oily smudge of his thumbprint on the glossy black scanner. Her heart started pounding. It was a long shot, something she'd only seen in movies, but it was a chance. The second his car was out of sight, she ran to the kitchen, her hands shaking. She grabbed the finest graphite powder she could find and a roll of clear packing tape. Back at the study door, she worked like a forensic expert, gently dusting the scanner. To her amazement, a perfect print appeared. Holding her breath, she carefully lifted the print with the tape. She pressed it against the scanner. Nothing. Then a soft electronic click. The door swung open. The study was exactly as she'd pictured. Cold, impersonal, and spotless. It smelled like ozone and Julian's expensive cologne. There were no family photos, no personal touches, just sleek surfaces and glowing computer screens. This wasn't an office. It was a command center. She didn't know what she was looking for, but she knew it wouldn't be obvious. She ran her hands under desks and behind bookshelves. Using her librarian's eye to spot any break in the room's perfect order. Behind a row of leather-bound first editions that were clearly just for show, her fingers brushed against a tiny seam in the woodwork. She pressed it, and a section of the bookshelf clicked open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside wasn't a safe. It was a climate-controlled recess holding a single object, a small, silver external hard drive. It was cool to the touch, humming with power. This was it. This was his secret. She slipped the drive into her pocket and retreated to her bathroom, the one place in the house that felt like hers. She pulled out an old laptop from her previous life, one that had never been connected to the mansion's Wi-Fi. With shaking hands, she plugged in the drive. It was password protected. Of course. For hours, Elena wasn't a socialite. She was a code breaker. She tried everything. His birthday, his mother's maiden name, Helios. Nothing worked. But then she started thinking not about Julian, but about Marcus. Julian was defined by his successes, but maybe his secrets were defined by his failures. She remembered a story he'd once told her about his very first startup, a spectacular failure right out of college that was supposed to create a new data compression algorithm. He'd called it Aperture Solutions. He spoke of it with a mix of shame and bitterness, calling it the mistake that taught him to be ruthless. She typed it in, APRTURE. The password prompt vanished. A single folder appeared on the screen. Empty contingency. Her blood ran cold. Empty Marcus Thornton. This wasn't just a file. It was a contingency plan. Inside was conspiracy so cold and calculated it stole her breath. There were dozens of internal lab reports from Marcus Thornton, detailing catastrophic failures of the Helios battery. Under pressure, the batteries were prone to overheating, combustion, and in several cases, violent explosions. Marcus's memos were frantic, begging Julian to halt the project and redesign the core. He warned that people could die. Then came the emails. She saw Julian's replies, first dismissive, then hostile. Your risk aversion is costing us billions. One of his emails read, the data will be adjusted. Get on board or get out of the way. The final email from Marcus was dated the day before his accident. It was a declaration of war. Julian, it began, I can't live with this. You are knowingly pushing a product that will kill people. I have compiled all my research. I'm going to press. You won't get away with it. The last file was an audio recording. With a sense of pure dread, Elena clicked play. It was Julian's voice, colder than she had ever heard it. It's taken care of, he said to someone. No, there won't be any loose ends. The authorities are calling it an accident. He was known to be a reckless hiker. There was a pause, and then the voice that haunted her dream said, the contingency is complete. The project is safe. The room started to spin. This wasn't a cover-up. It was a homicide. The man she married was a murderer. Her new life, her second chance at love, it was all built on a dead man's silence. Just then, her phone buzzed. A text from Julian. Landed in Tokyo. The house feels empty without you. I love you. The words were no longer comforting. They were a threat. He was watching her. Even from across the world, she looked at the damning evidence on her laptop. Her quiet, lonely life was over, replaced by a single, terrifying purpose. She had to expose a monster she had married. That discovery changed everything. Elena was no longer just a lonely wife. She was a hunted woman with a mission. The knowledge of what Julian did was a constant weight, a hum of terror under her skin. Every creak of the empty house sounded like a footstep. She knew Julian's text wasn't about love. It was a test. She replied with practiced emptiness. Miss you too. Hope the meetings go well. EXO. Her life now depended on her ability to act like nothing was wrong. She copied the entire MTE contingency folder to an encrypted thumb drive and hid it in the lining of an old purse, something so boring Julian would never look twice at it. Then she carefully erased her tracks, wiped the old laptop, and put Julian's study back exactly as she'd found it. The click of the lock behind her was the sound of her cage door swinging shut again, but this time she knew exactly what kind of monster was on the other side. Her first move was to find help. Marcus's last email said he was going to press. He must have had a contact. Searching through old tech articles, she found a recurring byline. Sarah Jenkins, an investigative journalist known for digging into corporate dirt. From a burner email account at a public library, Elena sent a cryptic message. I have information regarding Marcus Thornton's final project at Croft Industries. It's a matter of public safety. The reply came in an hour. Who is this? Elena wrote back. I can't reveal my identity. Meet me tomorrow. 2 p.m. The Botanical Gardens by the fountain. The meeting felt like something out of a spy movie. Elena wore a simple dress and sunglasses, feeling both silly and terrified. Sarah Jenkins was younger than she'd expected, with sharp, intelligent eyes. "You have 2 minutes to convince me this isn't a waste of my time," Sarah said, cutting right to the chase. Elena didn't waste a word. Marcus Thornton didn't have a hiking accident. He was murdered on Julian Croft's orders to cover up that the Helios battery is dangerously unstable. I have the test data and a recording of Croft confirming it. Sarah's skepticism vanished. She'd been hearing whispers about the Helios project for months. Marcus had even contacted her a year ago, sounding scared and promising a huge story. Then he went silent. "Show me," she said, in a quiet corner. Elena passed Sarah a drive with the files. As Sarah scanned the contents on a rugged little laptop, her face grew grim. This is worse than I imagined," she whispered. "These batteries are said to be in everything from cars to pacemakers. An explosion would be lethal." They formed a pact. Sarah had the contacts. Elena had the inside access. The plan was for Sarah to quietly verify the data with independent experts, while Elena played the part of the devoted wife and looked for the next piece of the puzzle, the money trail. Someone had been paid to make Marcus disappear. When Julian returned from Tokyo, he was different, sharper. He watched her more closely, his questions more specific. "You seem tired, Elena," he said one evening, his voice smooth as silk. "Maybe you should take a break. You're getting anxious." It was classic gaslighting, meant to make her doubt herself. But now she saw it for what it was, a weapon. Her performance must have worked, because he seemed to back off, but the tension was suffocating. She knew she was being watched. One day, her car brakes felt soft. She managed to pull over, heart pounding. As a mechanic later confirmed, her brake line had been deliberately nicked, a slow leak designed to cause an accident. It was a warning. The threat only made her more determined. While Julian was in a meeting, she made her riskiest move yet. Using passwords and security answers she'd memorized, she got into his private offshore bank account. It was a maze of shell corporations, but she was a librarian. She knew how to follow a trail. And there it was, a transfer of $250,000 made 2 days after Marcus's death. The payment memo was chillingly simple. Colorado Project. She sent the info to Sarah, whose experts had confirmed Marcus's data. The Helios battery was a ticking time bomb, and the launch was only a week away. Sarah warned her that Julian's lawyers would tear their evidence apart, painting Elena as an unstable wife looking for a payday. They needed something undeniable, something directly from Marcus Thornton. That's when Elena remembered what Mr. Pierce said. Obsessed with safety protocols. Triple checking, quadruple checking. Marcus was meticulous and paranoid. He wouldn't have bet everything on a single email. He would have had his own contingency plan. She went back to the hard drive files. But this time she looked at the code itself. Her librarian mind, trained to find patterns in chaos, noticed something strange. A small, encrypted program set to run on a specific date. The date was 3 days from now. And the program's name? Dead Man's Switch. They realized it instantly. Marcus Thornton had built his own insurance policy. The system was designed to send all of his research, everything, to the press and the authorities if he didn't periodically enter a code to stop it. His murder was the trigger. The system had been counting down for a year, and in 3 days, it would expose everything. A wave of relief washed over Elena, followed by pure terror. When that data dropped, Julian's empire would crumble. He would be ruined, facing a murder charge, and he would be a cornered animal. The final 72 hours of her marriage would be the most dangerous of her life. The dead man's switch changed the game. Now, it wasn't about finding proof. It was about surviving until the proof went public. Elena and Sarah met in a noisy coffee shop for one last frantic planning session. "He can't know you're gone until it's too late," Sarah insisted. "The second you disappear, he'll use every resource he has to find you and silence you. You have to play the part of the dutiful wife until the very last second." The plan was terrifyingly simple. Elena would fake a sudden illness and tell Julian she was going to a private wellness retreat to de-stress, a place with no cell service, giving her an excuse to be unreachable. The retreat was really a safe house. She had 48 hours to pack a small, untraceable bag, leave the house without tipping off security, and get to safety. The next 2 days were an agonizing performance. Elena complained of headaches and exhaustion. Julian watched her with his cold, analytical eyes. "I told you that you were overdoing it," he said, his voice dripping with fake concern. "I know a wonderful place in the Berkshires. I'll make the arrangements." He was controlling her even in her escape. The night before she was supposed to leave, he came home early with a gift, a stunning diamond necklace. As he fastened it around her neck, his cold fingers on her skin, he whispered, "A new beginning for us, Elena. After the launch, it will be just you and me." She knew in that moment the necklace had a tracking device. The retreat was just another cage. The next morning, she had to adapt. As she was getting ready to leave, she accidentally broke the clasp. "Oh, Julian, I'm so clumsy," she cried, her voice trembling. "It's so beautiful. Can you have it fixed for me while I'm away?" He looked annoyed, but he took the necklace and slipped it into his pocket. The drive to the retreat was the longest of her life, with one of Julian's silent guards at the wheel. As they drove, she pretended to get carsick and asked him to pull over at a small, wooded rest stop. When she got out for fresh air, she discreetly dropped her primary phone, the one Julian tracked, into a ditch. Then she insisted on using the public restroom. Inside, she didn't hesitate. She slipped out the back window, which Sarah's contact had left unlocked, and scrambled into the woods. She ran, her lungs burning, until she emerged onto a small service road where a sedan was waiting, with Sarah at the wheel. "He'll know you're gone within the hour," Sarah said as they sped away. "The countdown is at 24 hours. For the next day, they sat in the anonymous safe house apartment and watched the clock. At exactly 3 p.m. Eastern, Sarah's laptop exploded with alerts. The dead man switch had worked. The New York Times leaked documents allege massive fraud, safety cover-up at Croft Industries. The Wall Street Journal, SEC investigating Croft CEO. Reuters, global recall imminent for potentially explosive Helios battery. It was an avalanche. On a live feed, they watched as federal agents swarmed Croft Industries headquarters. The camera zoomed in as Julian Croft was escorted out not by assistants, but by 2 grim-faced FBI agents. His expensive suit was rumpled, his mask of cold composure finally shattered. As they put him in a car, his eyes scanned the crowd, a wild, cornered look on his face. He was looking for her, but she was gone. In the quiet of the safe house, Elena watched the man who was her husband, her dream, and her nightmare disappear. A single tear rolled down her cheek, not of sadness, but of absolute release. In the months that followed, the full story came out. The money trail Elena found led to the fixer, who confessed to murdering Marcus Thornton in exchange for a plea deal. The data from the dead man switch led to a global recall and the largest corporate fraud case in a decade. Croft Industries, once a titan, crumbled into bankruptcy. Elena cooperated fully with the authorities. She was no longer Elena Croft, the CEO's wife, but Elena Vance, the librarian who put the pieces together. The press called her a hero, but she didn't want the attention. She just wanted her quiet life back. After the trial, which ended with a life sentence for Julian, Elena sold everything, the mansion, the jewelry, all the artifacts of her gilded cage. She donated the entire fortune to a foundation she started in Marcus Thornton's name to support corporate whistleblowers. The final scene of her ordeal wasn't glamorous. It was just a simple afternoon. Elena stood in a small apartment she'd bought with her salary from a new job at University Library. The sun streamed to the window, illuminating dust dancing in the air. The room was filled with mismatched furniture, overflowing bookshelves, and paintings she had chosen herself. It was messy, it was real, and it was hers. She had married a cold CEO at 46, hoping for a second chance. After walking through a nightmare, she finally found one. It wasn't the life she'd expected, but was a life built not on a man's fortune, but on her own unshakable courage.